Are you hungry? I know I am. Let's get cracking. What's up, guys? My name is Jacob. Welcome to Conscious Cooking, the kitchen with a mission. Today's mission is to make a chicken stir fry. A healthy one. Not too much sodium, not too much fat, not greasy, nothing like that. And not too much fiber. That's another thing that you'll see me cover that as we go on from here, but my plan is essentially to use chicken breast, boneless, skinless chicken breast, as opposed to something like chicken thighs or leg meat, anything other than that. So right there, we're reducing some fat, some potential greasiness. Avoid certain high fiber vegetables, and avoid making a sauce for it. The reason being is that most sauces that you would add have a pretty high amount of salt, and I really want the food to be able to stand on its own. Now, a chicken stir fry, of course, has other things that go along with it. I'm going to be chopping up a great deal of vegetation to go with it and mixing that in with some rice. I don't feel the need to record how to make rice for you guys. I'm pretty sure you guys can figure that one out on your own. Maybe I'll do that as like a mini segment during the week, not on one of these actual episodes, but I'm going to head right on into it very shortly. So I will see you guys very soon. Alright, so what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to cube up this chicken into approximately 1-inch-ish pieces. You just want it into small bite-sized pieces to make it easier to eat. I'm just putting it in that little side bowl over there. I'm going to be marinating it afterwards, as I have discussed previously. But I basically just want to set this thing up for success. So I'm going to cut it up into, nice small bite-sized pieces. I want the pieces of the chicken to be a little bit bigger than the pieces of the veggies and other things that are going to be going in here, just because I do want the chicken to be, the star of the dish, so to speak. However, it is important that it's not too big, and you don't want it to be too small either. Now, the reason we're cutting this up before we marinate is simply because the more surface area that you have when you are marinating something, the more of a possibility the marinade has to soak into the meat. So basically, if we kept it like this, the marinade will be able to soak in here on the upside of the meat and here on the back side of the meat. But let's just say we cut it once. Now the marinade can soak in here where we cut it. And again, and again, and again, and again. So every time you cut this chicken, there's more surface area that the marinade can soak in through. And that's important because the more surface area you have for the marinade to soak in through, the more flavorful, the more tender, and the more moist the chicken will be. So you always want to make sure that you have your pieces you want them as small as you can, but you don't want them too small. As I said before, you don't want them too small because, one, they'll cook too quickly and you won't be able to develop that nice flavor that you want. And two, if you have really small pieces, they're more likely to burn, and you're more likely to encounter other issues while cooking, because really small pieces of food cook really, really fast. Now, this is just a little piece of fat and bone and gristle and stuff like that. Don't need that. Just going to cut it off, leave it over there to the side. I will, of course, discard of it afterwards. But cutting up chicken's pretty easy. It's, fast twitch muscle fibers. This is, of course, chicken breast. And there's not much to it. It's not like you have to carve around bones. It's not like there's a lot of fat in here. It's almost fat-free, very close to it. So it doesn't really take that much to cube it up nicely. And I'm just going to move this stuff off to the side and show you guys that this is about the chicken we have. I think it's around a pound and a quarter, something along those lines. But next up, we're going to get this thing marinated and keep working from there. Alright guys, so we are here, clean hands, clean chicken, clean bowl, clean counter, and we're going to get into marinating this thing. And whenever you marinate something, you're essentially just seasoning it before you cook it. You can of course season it during the cooking and after as well. It's really up to you. But for a marinade, especially with something like chicken, you want to pack as much flavor into it as possible. Now in my opinion, the first step to any marinade is salt. The other thing that you will find about me is that I don't really measure stuff. I kind of just go with the flow And especially when I'm dealing with a bowl, I go with what I call layers. So for this marinade, I want 2 layers of salt. So the way that we're going to do that is we're basically just going to cover this with enough salt until you have a layer of salt. And then you're going to mix it around and do the same thing again. So I'm just going to get out a fork, basically anything that I can use to stir this stuff up with, and just mix it around until I don't really see the salt anymore, just so that I know I'm getting another clean layer. I'm just going to leave that fork right there. We're going to be using it again. And add my second layer of salt. So now there's enough salt in here for me personally. The thing about chicken is that it doesn't have a huge amount of its own flavor, so you really do have to coax some of the flavor out of it. Now, salt, sugar, spice, acid, bitterness, all that sort of stuff are important when you're making a balanced marinade. The next thing I'm going to do is add some fresh ground black pepper. Please always go with fresh ground. Don't use stuff that's already ground. It's basically graphite at that point. So I'm going to add just 1 layer of this. It can be kind of strong. The thing about black pepper as opposed to other peppers is that black pepper tends to have more of a numbing sensation rather than like that really hard capsaicin kick that you get from like, well, not a chipotle, that's really more smoky, but like a habanero pepper, or if you're crazy, like a ghost pepper, something like that. Those tend to just light your mouth on fire. And the thing about black pepper is that it tends to have more of a numbing sensation. And this is going to be a pretty dry, or really more just of a thick marinade, which you'll see, because the next thing that we're going to add is another dry thing, thyme. Now, thyme goes great with chicken, so does rosemary. The reason I'm not going with rosemary is because this is going to be a stir fry. And I'm basically going to be dumping the chicken straight into the stir fry when I'm cooking it. And the thing about rosemary is that it's very woody. It's not particularly pleasant to chew on. Whereas thyme, much smaller, much more easy to handle. I'm just going to go with, a light dusting, so to speak, just to cover it, 1 layer, as I was explaining before. It gives it a nice little bit of color for the marinade. It's going to look nice. It's going to taste even better. And it also gives you that nice little herby kick that at least I like to have with chicken. Since I have Crohn's disease, I of course can't have fried chicken, but this kind of gives it a little hint at that flavor because, most chicken is made with 11 herbs and spices, if you know what I'm talking about. But the next thing that we're going to add is some paprika, but not just any paprika. We're going to be adding smoked paprika. And the reason I'm going to be doing that is because I like a little bit of smokiness with my chicken. And I know that that looks like a lot, but this isn't very hot paprika. It's really just smoky. It's smoked sweet paprika. That's the important thing to note. If you like your chicken spicy and can handle your chicken spicy, feel free to go with smoked hot paprika. It's just as good. It's just hot. Now, I do like spicy food. I definitely liked it a lot when I was younger before I got diagnosed. I, of course, got diagnosed at the age of 18, which is right around in the middle of, 19, which is right around the middle zone of where people typically get diagnosed. As my doctor was explaining to me, most people get diagnosed between the ages of 15 and 25. So it kind of made sense, my diagnosis, being in that age group. At the same time, I had noticed changes in my diet as I grew older. Like I was growing away from things like fast food and stuff like that and growing more towards these healthier foods. Now, so far we have some spice, some smoke, some salt, some heat, some herbaceousness. Now, the next thing I definitely want to add is some sweet because the rest of the stuff that's going to be going in here isn't particularly sweet. As you saw with the onions, I decided to, or as you're going to see with the onions rather, I decided to go with just regular onions rather than a sweet Vidalia onion because I really wanted more of an onion flavor than the sweetness. So right now we're just going to add a little bit of honey. I don't like adding granulated sugar to marinades unless, of course, I'm going to be, heating up the marinade before I mix it in. So now we have, now it's starting to get kind of gooey, which is... it's not a bad thing. The honey will also help the rest of the spices and the incoming acid to stick to the chicken and really give it that nice flavor. Really make sure that everything sticks to it and sinks in, which, you know, is important. You don't want your marinade to just sit next to the chicken. You want it to, you know, become one with the chicken. So the last thing that we're going to be adding is apple cider vinegar. Now, there are a lot of different vinegars out there. Some of the more popular ones being apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, rice vinegar, white wine vinegar, red wine vinegar. When it comes to pork, which I don't really eat that much, and chicken, I like apple cider vinegar, and with chicken, I occasionally use rice wine vinegar. Basically, I just want something that doesn't have that strong of a flavor and has a little bit of sweetness to it. Balsamic vinegar is too sweet. That's the issue with that one. It's a great vinegar. It makes a great sauce too. I prefer it with things like fish. But with this, I just want to add enough to kind of, you know, moisten everything up, so to speak. The other thing about acid, especially with vinegars, is that they break down the proteins and the enzymes. Well, they break down the proteins with enzymes and with that acetic acid, and they really start to soften things up and make them moist. So this is going to be extra tender now that we have that acid in there. I'm just going to mix it around for a bit, and as soon as I finish mixing it and I feel comfortable with how it looks and how it sits, I'm going to cover this up with some plastic wrap and stick it in the fridge overnight, and then we're going to get to cooking it tomorrow, which is going to be a blast and a half. I like how this looks. It's got that little nice red. It smells great, it looks great, and I'm really excited to cook it, but I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye. Alright guys, so as you can see right here, I'm going to be cutting up all the mise en place for the stir fry that we're going to be doing. The first thing I'm going to be doing is crushing up this garlic a little bit. Normally I would use, like, I don't know, a brick to crush up all this garlic. Actually, normally I use a really big pan, and I just whack the crap out of it to break it up. But right here, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to use the bowl itself to crush them, and then I'm going to take my knife, chop them into some smaller pieces. I want each piece about the size of my pinky nail, maybe a little bit smaller if I can get it smaller. I'm not super worried about uniformity, and I'm not super worried about the size in general. And if you see, yes, I'm barefoot. It's my kitchen. I don't care. But the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be dicing up the celery as well as the carrots. That is my dog's bowl. We have 4 dogs. I have to gate them out when I'm cooking. Fun facts you can learn about me. But I'm going to be just dicing up this celery nice and small. Obviously, I sped up this portion of the video. I sped it up by about 4 times. So the whole process probably took me about 20 minutes. I was doing this before I left for work. I was just chatting with my dad since he was home. Normally he leaves a lot earlier in the day. He was home this morning, so I figured I would just talk to him, get some work done in the kitchen, get all of these things cut up. I also apologize for the shakiness. I'm wearing my chest harness for the GoPro right now, and you don't really realize how much your chest actually moves when you're doing stuff with your arms. But we're dicing up the carrots. I want pretty much everything to be about the same size, roughly the size of my pinky nail. And for some of the bigger pieces of the carrots, I want to slow down, make sure that I don't do anything wrong. As you saw right there, it's, you know, a round surface. I mean, it's a round object on a flat surface, so they're likely to roll around a lot more than you might think. So you always want to be careful when you're handling your knife. And the other thing you want to remember is that you will cut yourself with a dull knife, not a sharp knife. That's not to say you can't cut yourself with a sharp knife. You, of course, can. And every time you see me pick my hand up, that's me talking to my dad. That has nothing to do with what's going on the cutting board right there. That's just me talking to my dad, so don't worry about anything like that. So next up, I'm going to break down these bell peppers. I went with 1 red, 1 orange, and 1 yellow. The reason being is that I want everything to look nice. I want everything to be all pretty. Dad, stop talking so I can cut my mise en place for this stir fry. As I'm just breaking everything down to small pieces, as I said. And I really wanted to just have a variety of vegetables that are relatively low in fiber, higher in nutrients, that will cook at about the same speed. So I have red bell pepper, orange bell pepper, and a yellow bell pepper. I also have two white onions, or yellowish white onions. I don't remember exactly which ones they are. The celery, the carrots, and then of course the garlic. I will, of course, be mixing all of these in with rice at the end. I'm not going to be showing you guys how to cook rice. I'm kind of hoping you can figure that one out on yourselves. Normally it says it on the side, and it's just rice. It's not like I did anything special to it. I just wanted some rice to go with this so that we would have a complex carbohydrate to complement everything else that we're doing here. And as you can see, still dicing, slicing and dicing like a madman, breaking down these red bell peppers. When you're breaking down vegetation, first of all, you want to clean your knife and your board in between each thing, or in between each food group, I would say. Like in between each pepper, I don't really care, but in between peppers and onions, or between the garlic and everything else, I would rinse my board, make sure everything was nice and clean and clear before I continued. I'm not worried about cross-contamination, so to speak. I'm more just worried about there being too much of a buildup of moisture on the cutting board, and I don't really want to have to deal with that, simply because it could cause an issue, potentially. I don't think it will, but it could. So I just want to be extra safe, make sure everything has a nice, stable, smooth surface to go off of, and just, start breaking these things down. The other thing about knife work, please don't rush. Take your time with your knife work. First of all, it's a nice activity. I enjoy doing knife work. The other reason is if you rush, you're more likely to cut yourself, and if you cut yourself, you're done. You're done cooking. You can't cook with a cut. You can't do more work with a cut. So take your time. If you are not experienced with a knife, please use supervision. Or if you're a child, adult supervision is absolutely mandatory. I don't care if you live under your parents' roof. I don't care how old you are. If you're 40 and you live under your parents' roof, use parental supervision. Knives are very dangerous. I have cut myself many, many times using knives throughout the years and years that I've been cooking. There's no chef or cook who's never cut themselves. It's part of being a chef or a cook, whatever you want to call it. So right around here, I'm finally starting to wrap up, and yeah, that's going to be it. Alright guys, we are here. I had to turn my head to make sure that things were all recording properly, but we are here and it is time to begin the cooking. I am going to put this on medium heat. That's all you really need for something like this. And we're going to let it slowly come up to temperature, as is, that's how it works. Things come up to temperature pretty slowly. I'm going to go over here and grab canola oil. Now, the reason I'm going with canola oil is because it can handle a lot of heat. It doesn't degrade very quickly, and you literally just want enough to ever so slightly barely cover the bottom of the pan. In this case, I'm just using a wok. That's, I think it's the best tool for the job. It's not, a super crazy powerful wok or anything like that. It's just a wok. A household wok that I'm putting over a regular old burner, as you can see right there. And you just want to do that until the oil starts to shimmer, because that way it is hot enough. And the first thing that we will, of course, be adding is the garlic. Now, the reason we're adding the garlic first is because it will flavor the majority of the dish, and we want that nice garlic flavor before we add in the chicken, which has marinated overnight. It looks great. It smells also great, and I'm very excited for this. Now, the oil is just about where I want it to be. I'm going to put on the fan, which I apologize for the noise. It's kind of unavoidable, but with that, we're going to get started. And I'm just going to grab a metal spoon and scoop everything out. Move everything around, make sure everything is coated evenly. Try and get it into one single layer, preferably a thin layer. You don't want everything all stacked up on itself. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not enough oil for all of this food. And you're right. Sort of. The whole point of doing this is we're trying to use as little fat as possible because fat will irritate your stomach, especially if you have a condition such as Crohn's disease, as I do. So I like to use as little fat as possible when cooking. Right now, I'm just using enough to make sure nothing really sticks. And that's all I really need, because once everything is in here, moisture will be leaking out of the food, and that will provide all the remaining moisture that we really need. So I will be right back. Alright, so as you guys can see, the garlic has softened considerably. It's gotten a little bit of color. We're still going right here, but it has reached the point where I am now comfortable adding the next wave of ingredients, which is the celery and the carrots. Now, the reason we're adding those second is because they're a little tougher than the onions and the bell peppers. So we want to give these more time to cook so that they will soften up more, so that you don't have a bunch of different textures in your final dish. A little bit of difference in texture is nice, but you don't want too much. Too much of a difference and it'll be confusing in the mouth. So we're just going to toss these in here, mix them around. What I may actually do is I may add a little bit of water to this. The reason being is that water will, it'll create some steam, it'll loosen everything up, and it has the potential of making the cooking go by a little bit faster. Now, we are cooking over medium heat, so I'm not especially worried about that. However, if this does seem to be taking a while, I may add a little bit of water just to loosen everything up, get some steam action going, and start moving this stuff around a little bit faster. But for now, that's going to be it. I will be back when this has softened up. Alright guys, so we have moved along significantly. I did end up adding some water to this to speed it up. But now we are going to add the final wave of vegetation, as well as a little bit of spice in the form of salt and some freshly ground black pepper. But first we're going to add all of this goodness to the pan. Ooh, that looks nice. It's so pretty and colorful. And we're going to mix everything up together. Add some salt, add some black pepper. I'll probably add... I may add some thyme to this as well. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to add any thyme to this. I'm going to add plenty of salt, plenty of black pepper. And then we're going to do something really interesting. So I'm going to go grab the salt and the black pepper. I'll be right back. Alright, so I have returned. We are going to add a full layer, a full cover. I don't remember what I called it last night when I was marinating the chicken, but we are going to add a good heavy amount of black pepper. Mix that up together. All of this goodness. All of this delicious goodness. Now we're going to add 2 layers of salt because there's a lot of mass in here. So here is the first layer. Now we're going to mix this up again. I'm trying to move my head as little as possible because that is where the GoPro is mounted right now. It is on my head. So, like I said, I'm going to try and move as little as possible so that the footage is as stable as possible. So I apologize for any unstable footage, but, it's just me recording this. I have no production assistants or anything like that to be holding cameras. And now we're going to add the second layer. And then we're going to add some water as well, and then the interesting part will come along. So we're going to mix this up. I'm going to add some dihydrogen monoxide. Do not add carbon monoxide, that is poisonous. So in goes the water. Leave that off to the side. I'm going to mix this up. As you can see, there's a lot of water in the bottom now. And we're actually going to be using that to our advantage. How, you ask? Well, steam. The power of steam. See, steam is a very effective cooking method because it doesn't wash away nutrients the way that boiling does, but it also conveys a lot of heat the way similar to cooking something in an oven would. So I'm actually going to take a big metal pan and cover this. and let some steam action go to work. I'm going to come back in about 5 minutes, see how soft everything is, and if I like the way that it feels, the way that it looks, I'm going to continue. If not, I'm going to leave it on there, keep mixing it, so on and so forth. So I will be right back. Alright guys, so it has been about 5 minutes. I'm going to remove the metal cover pan, and things look nice. We have a lot more moisture in here from all that steam building up. Now, things look relatively cooked. However, the problem right now is we have way too much moisture in here. So that's actually a really simple fix. We're just going to drain it off. That's why I'm using a slotted spoon. We're just going to drain off most of this moisture by putting everything into just this glass bowl that I have off to the side. And then we're just going to take all of this moisture and just dump it out into the sink. We don't need it. It's not serving us any purpose whatsoever. So we're just going to get rid of it. See, now that's much better. We have a lot less moisture left in this pan. We just have, you know, the food, the good stuff. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to boost the heat up to high so that we really start, you know, breaking this stuff down, making sure that it's all nice and soft and edible. And I'm going to cover it up after I finish mixing it, and we should be good to go in about 5 minutes. So, see you soon. Alright guys, so as you can see, we are on high heat. Things are going great. Everything's about where I want it to be. So you can also see there's pretty much no moisture left in the pan, which is just about perfect for what we're looking for, because we do need to start fresh when we add the chicken. So I'm actually going to turn the heat off just for a bit so that we can get all of this goodness out of the pan and into the glass bowl that we were using before. Because the thing that we need to do here, and here I'm actually gonna, you know, just scrape everything out. I apologize for the nails on the chalkboard noise. But we're gonna rinse out this pan, rinse off this spoon, and then get to cooking the chicken. So we're gonna need a tiny bit more oil just to make sure nothing sticks, but we should be fine. Alright folks, so we are ready to add the chicken. The oil is at temperature. All that popping, it's not the oil. It's the leftover water that was under the oil. So the steam is kind of, you know, popping itself out of there. Jeez, relax. There we go. So you immediately see all that juicy goodness from the chicken starting to coagulate on the bottom. And at this point, just to get the heat back up, I'm going to put it on high. We're not going to leave it on high. That'll cook the outside way too fast, so the inside won't end up being cooked. And we definitely don't want that. So boost the heat up to high just until the pan starts to make a little bit of noise again. Just until you know everything is, you know, really cooking. Then we're going to, you know, put the pan back on medium. Slap a lid on it, just like that, and let the steam do the work for us. Alright guys, so as you can see, the steam has done quite a bit of work drying out some of the moisture from this chicken. We're trying to make sure that it is fully cooked all the way through. You do of course want to, when you remove the chicken from the heat, you want it to be ever so slightly shy of done, because the carryover heat will finish cooking it. Now with small pieces like this, you're not going to have a huge amount of carryover heat, but it will carry it easily like 5 degrees. 5 to 10 I would say, depending on how hot you are cooking it to. So I'm going to leave this like this with the lid off for a few more minutes just to let it finish cooking. And in about 2 minutes, I'll probably turn off the heat and just let the residual heat keep cooking it, and then when I finally take it off of the heat entirely, I will let the carryover do the rest of the work. But as you can see right now, We've got very nice bubblage, and the chicken smells great. I know you guys can't smell it. I apologize. I hope you're cooking along at home, but it's going to be a good dish and a good day. Alright guys, it has been about 2 minutes. I'm going to kill the heat. So the heat is now off, and I'm going to slap on the lid. And in about 2 minutes, we're going to remove everything from the heat, clean up, and get ready to start plating. Alright folks, the 2 minutes is up. As you can see, the chicken looks mighty nice. So we're just going to get all this goodness out of here, put it in this little side bowl. It smells amazing. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of almost like pizza dough. It's got that little nice herbaceousness to it. It's got a nice acid content. There's only, it can only go up from here. And I'm excited to show you guys the final product as soon as we get everything worked through. But I will be back when we're ready to plate. Alright ladies and gents, it is finally time for us to plate up this stir fry. I'm going to grab a nice heaping spoonful, I'll probably actually grab 2, of the rice and veggies. And then I'm just going to lay the chicken down right next to it. The chicken does not scoop especially well. But there it is. We have a nice full plate of a very healthy and I'm sure a very delicious meal. I'm actually going to zoom in on this for you guys. Right there. That is our finished plate, our finished meal. I hope you guys have played along, cooked along at home. I hope you like it. That's going to be it for me. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with your friends. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all again so very much for joining me here at Conscious Cooking, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye.